Welcome back to Timeline of World History. We have reached the year 4500 BC and we start our episode back in mainland Greece, where previously we looked at the late Neolithic period. Final Neolithic Greece, 4500 to 3200 BC. The Final Neolithic was a period from 4500 to 3200 BC, when the transition from the farming and stock rearing economy of the Neolithic to the economy of the early Bronze Age took place. Production activities improved and grew with the distribution of the usage of metals. The first working of gold, silver and copper for jewelry making and tools goes back to this period. This transitional period became known as the Chalcolithic or Copper Age. In Thessaly it was known as the Rashmani, while in the Cyclades and southern Greece it was referred to as the Attila-Kipala culture. Coastal zones, in particular caves and islands, became more densely populated, while in the lowlands certain settlements seem to have acquired considerable economic importance. Settlements were often surrounded by ditches, such as the one at Dimini, while in architecture rectangular stone and for the first time buildings with a semicircular apse at the end were used in Thessaly. Frequent use of caves was linked with development in stock rearing and intensification of sea contacts and commercial exchanges. Practice of farming ensured supplies as indicated by the presence of storage yards. In the Cyclades, the exploitation of lead ore that was rich in silver has been observed, while the presence of gold and silver jewelry and tools in caves and settlements was evidence that metalworking was an important activity in many areas of the Aegean. Gold strips and figurines, silver earrings, copper pins, and triangular or leaf-shaped obsidian spearheads were used as symbols of social prestige in the Peloponnese, Aegean islands and Macedonia. These items were owned by a few people that indicated social structures were being transformed. 53 gold jewelry pieces from a treasure hoard that were similar to pieces found at Varna cemetery, Bulgaria, more on them later, confirmed that economic and social changes were taking place. Collections of bones and burials in caves have been discovered, while the organization of cemeteries on Kepala, on Euboea, and the Dodecanese is remarkable. There was an increase in monochrome pottery made from badly fired clay that was burnished in tones of red, brown and grey-black in Thessaly, southern Greece, Aegean and Ionian islands. Painted pottery in red or white that covered the way surface after firing is typical of those found in Thessaly. The final Neolithic period of Greece was succeeded by the Helladic period in 3200 BC. The Varna culture was a Copper Age culture of northeastern Bulgaria that lasted for 300 years between 4400 and 4100 BC. It was characterized by polychrome pottery and rich cemeteries, the most famous of which are the type site of Varna necropolis and the Dawenkou complex that comprise the largest prehistoric cemetery in southeastern Europe. Varna necropolis was discovered in October 1972 by Raicho Marinov before being researched further by Mihail Lazarov and Ivan Ivanov. 30% of the necropolis has still not been excavated. The Dawenkou complex had an adjoining Neolithic settlement and an incomplete excavated Copper Age settlement. Findings show that the culture had trade relations with distant lands, including the lower Volga and the Cyclades, exporting metal goods and salt from Provadia salt mine. Copper ore was obtained from Sredna Gora near Stara Zagora, and seashells from the Mediterranean found in graves served as primitive currency. And it might sound primitive with seashells as currency, but real coins are far away in the future at this point. The Varna necropolis contains some of the world's oldest gold jewelry. 294 graves have been found, many containing sophisticated examples of copper and gold, 600 pieces of pottery, high-quality flint and obsidian blades, beads and shells. The deceased were buried in a crouched and extended position. Some graves contained no bodies and were simply symbolic, containing gold artifacts. 3,000 gold artifacts have been found, weighing approximately 6 kilograms. Grave 43 contained more gold than anything found across the rest of the world during the Neolithic and Copper Age period. The Varna culture had sophisticated religious beliefs about the afterlife and developed hierarchical status differences. The oldest known burial of an elite male was discovered that contained remarkable amounts of gold, a war axe or mace, and a gold sheath on that the male wore his manhood. Bull-shaped gold platelets venerated virility, force and warfare. Our old friend Marija Gimbutas, founder of the Kurgan hypothesis, claimed that the transition to a male-dominated society began in Europe. The decline of the Varna, along with the Karanovo, Vinca and Lengyel, as well as shifts in population to the north and northwest, could be evidence of a catastrophe that cannot be explained by climate change, desertification or disease. Evidence of the incursion of horse-riding warriors from the steppes is found in single burials of males under barrows and from the emergence of a complex of Indo-European cultural traits. If so, this would prove Marija Gimbutas' theory of an old Europe being displaced by Proto-Indo-European people who were more like warlike. Of course, as history was to prove time and time again, populations would be displaced by fearsome horse-riding warriors from the steppes, such as the Huns or the Mongols. For the first time in our story, we have reached the land of Egypt. The period before the rise of the pharaohs was known as pre-dynastic period, spanning from the earliest human settlement to the beginning of the early dynastic period in circa 3100 BC. From approximately 6000 BC, the pre-dynastic era entered the Neolithic age with various cultures emerging first in Lower Egypt, the area around the Nile Delta and Mediterranean Sea, and then at the beginning of the 5th millennium BC in Upper Egypt, the area further upstream towards the border with Sudan or Kush. The majority of archaeological finds from this period have been found in Upper Egypt because the Nile silt was heavily deposited at the Delta region, which completely buried most Delta sites long before modern times. At the beginning of the 5th millennium BC, the Tassian culture emerged in Upper Egypt. This culture was notable for producing the earliest blacktop ware, which consisted of red and brown pottery that was painted black on both the top and interior. It is the succeeding culture that we will be focused on, because in 4400 BC the Badarian culture emerged that provided the earliest evidence of agriculture in Upper Egypt during the pre-dynastic period. It seems that they were influenced by cattle herders from the western desert who moved into the Nile Valley during the 5th millennium BC due to the expansion of the desert in the Sahara following climate change. Another influence may have come from the Merimde culture of Lower Egypt that emerged 400 years earlier. The culture was named after the site of El-Badari in Asyut Governorate, Upper Egypt, approximately 200 kilometers northwest of modern-day Luxor. The site was excavated by Guy Brunton and Gertrude Catton Thompson between 1922 and 1931. About 40 settlements and 600 graves have been located in an area covering 30 kilometers along the east bank of the Nile. Little is known of their buildings, although remains of wooden stumps suggested that a hut or shelter were constructed of light materials such as reeds, skins or mats. Storage pits were used as granaries. The culture cultivated emmer wheat, barley, lentil and flax, kept sheep, goats and cattle, fished from the river Nile and practiced limited hunting of gazelle. The deceased were buried in oval or rectangular pits inside small cemeteries on the outskirts of settlements. The body was placed on mats in a contracted position, with their head facing south, looking towards the west. The west would later be seen as the realm of the dead. Most local cemeteries have yielded red polished pottery with blackened tops, terracotta and ivory figures, slate palettes for cosmetic use, stone vases and flint tools. Social stratification has been inferred from burials of wealthy members of the community in different parts of the cemetery, a forerunner of things to come. Trade was carried out with the Delta region, the Red Sea and the Sinai Peninsula. Copper awls and pins, glazed steatite beads, shells, porphyry slabs and turquoise were obtained from these areas. A four-handled pot of hard pinkware may have come from as far away as Syria. This suggested that the Badarians were not an isolated tribe, but were in contact with cultures all around them. It is possible that the Badarians obtained their own copper and green malachite ore, the latter used for personal decoration by using those stone palettes. The gradual stratification of society into leaders and followers, a small ruling class and a larger group of subjects, owed much to the challenging lifestyle faced by those pastoral cattle herders of the Western Desert. This transformed Badarian society. Gradual changes took root over many centuries. The wealthy got wealthier, acting as patrons to a new class of specialist craftsmen. These craftsmen developed new technology and products to satisfy their patrons' sophisticated tastes. Introduction of restricted access to prestige goods and materials reinforced the power and status of the wealthiest in society. The Badarian would transform into the Amurathean culture in 4000 BC, the first of what is known as the Naqada phase, that would ultimately lead to the early dynastic period of the late 4th millennium BC. The Funnelbeaker culture was an archaeological culture in North Central Europe that developed as a technological merger of local Mesolithic and Neolithic complexes between the lower Elbe and the middle Vistula rivers. They introduced farming and husbandry as a major source of food to the pottery using hunter-gatherer cultures north of this area. It was preceded by the stroke-ornamented ware culture groups, Late Lengyel and Baden-Boleras in the southeast, Rössen group in the southwest, and Ertebölle-Ellerbeck groups in the north. The complex is divided into a northern group occupying northern Germany and southern Scandinavia, a western group in the Netherlands between the Zuiderzee and lower Elbe, eastern group centered on the Vistula from the Oder to the Bug, and south central groups around the middle and upper Elbe and Saale. The culture is named for its characteristic ceramics, beakers and amphorae with funnel-shaped tops that were found in dolmen burials. With the exception of inland settlements such as Alvastra, most settlements were located near those of the previous Ertebölle culture on the coast. Large cult centers were constructed surrounding by pales, earthworks and moats. The largest one at Sarup on Fyn, that's in Denmark, measured 85,000 square meters and was estimated to have taken 8,000 days to construct. Another site at Stävje near Lund in Sweden measured 30,000 square meters. These settlements were characterized by single-family wattle and daub houses that measured 12 meters times 6 meters. Animal husbandry of sheep, cattle, pigs and goats dominated the economy, but some hunting and fishing was carried out. Primitive wheat and barley were grown on small patches of land that expired quickly, which caused the population to move small distances on a regular basis. Mining and collection of flint was traded with regions in Scandinavia that lacked the necessary material. Copper was imported from Central Europe to produce daggers and axes. Burial practices varied depending on region and time. The oldest graves consisted of wooden chambered cairns inside long barrows. They were covered with a heap of dirt, with the entrance blocked by a stone. Later, long barrows were replaced by passage graves and dolmens. With the introduction of these types of burials, the Funnelbeaker culture marked the first appearance of megalithic tombs on the coast of the Baltic and the North Sea, such as the one found at Siebensteinhäuser in northern Germany. These tombs are similar to those that would appear in Britain and Ireland in the 4th millennium BC. The deceased were buried with ceramic vessels, amber jewelry and flint axes. Flint axes were also deposited in streams and lakes, with 10,000 being found in Sweden alone. One unique ceramic vessel discovered in Poland was the Bronocice pot, that showed the oldest known depiction of a wagon drawn by aurochs, whose remains were found with the pot. Once again, Marija Gimbutas represented this culture as non-Indo-European, who were superseded by those warlike Indo-European tribes from the steppes to the east. She postulated that the relationship between both cultures resulted in a quick cultural transition from Funnelbeaker to corded ware culture in 3rd millennium BC. Other archaeologists have proposed that the corded ware culture was a local development from the Funnelbeaker culture. Whatever the theory, the Funnelbeaker was succeeded by the globural amphora culture and the corded ware culture in 2800 BC. The Carnac stones are a collection of megalithic sites around the village of Carnac in Brittany, dating to approximately 4300 BC. More than 3,000 standing stones were hewn from the local rock and erected on the site, forming the largest collection in the world. Although myths suggested that they were formed either by pagan soldiers being turned to stone in the Roman era by Pope Cornelius, or that they were Roman legion turned to stone by Merlin, the stones were actually erected by prehistoric people who lived in Brittany at the turn of the French Neolithic Age. The main collection consists of 3 major groups of stone rows known as menhirs. The first group, known as the Menec alignment, consists of 11 converging rows of menhirs stretching for 1165 times 100 meters. The largest stones, measuring approximately 4 meters in height, are at the wider western end. These become smaller as you move east, some being only 0.6 meters in height, before growing in height again when you reach the far eastern end of the alignment. According to the tourist office, there is cromlech containing 71 stone blocks at the western end and a ruined cromlech at the eastern end. A cromlech is a circle of standing stones in Brittany, although it can be classified as a megalithic tomb in Wales. The second group, known as the Kermario alignment, is a fan-like layout of 1029 stones in 10 columns, measuring approximately 1300 meters in length. A stone circle lies at the east end. The final group, known as the Kerlescan alignment, is a smaller group of 555 stones situated to the east of the other 2 alignments. It comprises 13 rows, measuring approximately 800 meters in length. The stones range from 80 centimeters to 4 meters in height. At the western end, there is a stone circle that has 39 stones. As well as the stone alignments, the site contains tumuli, dolmens and other formations. Tumuli are mounds of earth built over a passage tomb that leads to central chamber. One such example is the tumulus of Saint Michel that was constructed between 5000 and 3400 BC. Currently there is a replica of a 1663 chapel built on top of the 12-meter high mound, as you can see on the picture here. This did not stop excavations being carried out by René Galles in 1862, who dug a series of 8-meter vertical pits into the mound. Further excavations by Zachary Le Roussy between 1900 and 1907 discovered the actual tomb that contained 15 stone chests, pottery and jewelry. As for the mound itself, it required 35,000 cubic meters of stone and earth, a colossal amount for people who only had bone and stone tools in their possession. Remember, this is approximately 1,800 years before the pyramids of Egypt were constructed. Dolmens are tombs that are constructed with several large stones supporting a capstone that is buried under a mound of earth. Due to the acidic soil of Brittany, most of the mound has eroded away to leave just the large stones. The best example is at Kerkado. Unlike most of the dolmens, this one is still covered by its original cairn. Located south of the Kermario alignment, the dolmen measures 25 to 30 meters wide, 5 meter high, and has a small menhir on top. You can see that in the picture. It was previously surrounded by a circle of small menhirs. The passage of the dolmen is 6.5 meters long, leading to a large chamber that contained axes, arrowheads, some animal and human teeth, pearls and shards, and 26 blue nephrite beads. On its inner surface, carvings of megalithic art in the form of serpentines are found alongside a double axe carved on the underside of the main roof. Serge Casson, who has studied Karnak for 20 years, found similar rock art inside the passage grave of Table des Merchants at Loc Mariaquer. Sorry for butchering these French names. He suggested that the art of numerous stone axes on the ceiling was proof that farmers built the tomb as a process of laying claim to the land. The axe is shown on top of what seems to be throwing sticks that were used by Mesolithic people. This is where the new world of agriculture meets the old world of hunting. Could the stone alignments have been built by farmers hoping to keep the hunters out? Or could they have been built by the last Mesolithic hunters as a boundary to stop the spread of farming? We will never know. Since 1991, the stone alignments have been protected from the public by fencing to help vegetation growth. Tourists can only visit on organized tours during the winter. In 2002, protesters opened padlocks, invaded the site, and allowed tourists free entry, demanding management stop its current plans, particularly with the experiment of allowing sheep to graze among the stones to keep weeds under control. It's sad that it has come to this. The Dawenkou culture was a Neolithic culture located in Shandong, China, between 4100 and 2600 BC. The type site of Dawenkou, located in Tai'an, Shandong, was excavated in 1959, 1974 and 1978. It is the middle layer that is associated with this culture, as the earliest layer corresponds to the Beixin culture and the later layer to the early Shandong part of the Longshan culture. The similarity of the Jiahu people to the later Dawenkou indicated that the Dawenkou descended from the Jiahu, who migrated along the middle and lower Huai River and Hanshui Valley. Other scholars speculated that the Dawenkou originated in nearby regions to the south. They suggested that the Dawenkou descended from the Beixin culture, but was influenced by the northward expansion of the Longquishuang culture between the Yangtze and Huai rivers. The warm and wet climate of the area was suitable for the cultivation of millet. Storage containers have been found that contained approximately 2,000 kilograms of millet. Southern sites became more important for rice, especially during the later period. Human remains in southern Shandong revealed that the upper class had a diet of rice, while the ordinary folk ate millet. Chicken, dogs and cattle were domesticated. However, the most important domesticated animal was the pig, which accounted for 85% of the total remains found. Fish and shellfish mounds have been found in the early period, which indicated they were important food sources. A typical type of pottery associated with Dawenkou was a whiteware tripod ewer known as a gui. It was fashioned from an assemblage of individual parts. The earthenware body was encircled by a thin band, supported on 3 hollow legs that terminated in pointed feet. The tall neck of the vessel was pinched to form a long pointed spout with the base of the neck encircled by a painted band of red pigment. On the opposite side of the spout, a rope-twisted handle arches from the neck to the body of the vessel. thin-walled whiteware pottery made its appearance during the Middle Period, 3500 to 2800 BC. In the early phase, gui vessels had solid legs with the handle joined to the base of the neck. In the late period, 2800 to 2600 BC, short hollow legs were attached to a rounder body. Handle was joined high up the neck, and a band around the body became a standard feature. The vessel continued to evolve during the Longshan culture. When fired at approximately 900 degrees Celsius, the high clay content in whitewares produced a fine-grained, light-colored pottery that ranged from white, yellow to pink. Whiteware pottery seemed to have been reserved for ritual purposes. As well as whiteware, the Dawenkou was known for its jade carvings, black and grey ceramics, and redware ceramics. The political organization of the Dawenkou consisted of a dominant kin group, although power was through religious authority rather than coercion. Unlike the earlier Bixin, the Dawenkou were a violent people who engaged in raids for land, crops, livestock and prestige goods. Not good for those who were in their way. One other feature of the Dawenkou was the earliest practice of trepanning in prehistoric China. A skull dated to 3000 BC was found with severe head injuries that appears to be remedied by drilling a hole into his skull. Ouch! Remember, this would have been done by stone tools and no anesthetic. Still, it seemed to have worked. The Dawenkou would be superseded by the Longshan culture in 2600 BC. Next time we'll approach the beginning of the 4th millennium BC. This will consist of Uruk period of southern Mesopotamia, beginnings of Neolithic Britain, a return to the Jomon period of Japan, and a continuation of Neolithic Upper Egypt with the first Nakada culture known as Amracian. If you want to get hold of Shane, who writes the scripts for these fantastic shows, you can catch him on Twitter at Sarak002 or on his website timelineofworldhistory.wordpress.com. He has a YouTube channel, Sarak002, which is dedicated to PS4 gaming walkthroughs. But for now, it's time to say goodbye from Shane of Timeline of World History and me, Dan, the fan of history. Until next time, enjoy your history and goodbye.